Story 1. Alright, so check this out. I either saw this guy experience his own personal time slip, or he has a doppelganger. A while back, I was riding a city bus, sitting in the middle section facing the back. At some point, a young man in his 20s wearing headphones appeared from behind me and took a spot in the standing area right in front of me. He was loaded down with shopping bags and a backpack, but didn't sit down, which was kind of weird because the bus was nearly empty. He stood there for about 15 minutes, talking nonstop on his phone. Eventually, I watched him head to the back door, step off the bus, and walk away. I sighed thinking, finally some peace and quiet. About 10 minutes later, after a few more stops, bam, out of nowhere, that exact same guy, same bags, same headphones, still talking on the phone, appeared from behind me again and took the same standing spot that he had before. It was like watching someone respawn at a checkpoint in a video game. Same spot, same conversation, same everything. I just sat there stunned. Shortly after that, my stop came up, so I didn't have much time to process what I'd just witnessed. But I have no clue how or why he pulled off that stunt, and honestly, I don't even think he knew it happened. Story 2. On my son's birthday, my husband and I talked about picking up a balloon inflator that a friend had kindly offered us, but we never set a time, and he never gave me the friend's address. Naturally, I forgot all about it. Later that day, I wanted to get some plant pots to spruce up the porch for the party. I searched Facebook Marketplace and found someone giving away 10 good-looking pots. We agreed on a price, and I set out to pick them up. I entered the seller's address into my GPS and drove to the house. For some reason, I was absolutely convinced the house was number 22. I pulled up, knocked on the door, and to my complete shock, my friend answered. The same friend who had offered us the balloon inflator. She looked confused, since we never arranged a time for me to come by, and I was just as confused as to why she was answering the door. She was in the middle of a video call and told me to hold on a minute. Meanwhile, I was standing there in complete disbelief. Still puzzled, I quickly asked, "Are you living with Luke?" Luke was the name of the person selling me the pots. My friend frowned and said, "Luke? No, wait a minute." I walked back to my car, pulled out my phone, and realized the actual address was 26, not 22. Before I could say anything, my friend came outside with the balloon inflator and said, "I didn't know you were coming to pick this up. Hope it's useful. Say hi to your husband and enjoy the party." Then she paused. "Wait, why are you here?" I finally explained, "Look, I actually came to pick up some plant pots. Not the inflator. I wasn't planning on getting it today, and I didn't even know your address." She just stood there, confused. Then I walked over to house 26 and knocked on the door. And guess what? Luke was my friend's neighbor. There are over 100,000 houses in my city. Google Maps had no idea about the party or the pots or the inflator. And yet somehow, by a completely random mistake, I ended up exactly where I needed to be, even though I never planned it. To this day, I'm still completely baffled. Story 3. I think time loops are real, and I think I got caught in one. Many years ago, I attended a training seminar for a new job at a place called the Washington. It's a large motel and conference center facing I-270 in Gaithersburg, Maryland, just outside of D.C. When I got there, the parking lot was nearly full, so I had to park way out by the highway. As I stepped out of my rental car, I glanced toward the freeway, and for some reason, my eyes locked onto an approaching car. It was a silver Porsche 914. I watched it closely as it passed and disappeared into the distance. Then I caught myself thinking, why am I staring at this car? I mean, I liked the model well enough, but it wasn't some ultra-rare exotic like a Ferrari or something. Still, something about it stuck with me. Eventually, I shrugged it off and went inside, but the moment lingered. Over time, I found myself increasingly drawn to the Porsche 914. I read about it, looked at listings, and eventually, I bought one. A silver one. Fast forward 3 years. I'm driving my new silver Porsche 914 down I-270 toward DC for a meeting. As I approach the Washingtonian, I see the motel sign up ahead, and then something jolts me to my core. Standing in the parking lot, staring at my car as I pass by, is me. I was watching myself drive past. There was no doubt. It was me. Same posture. Same stare. It felt like touching a live wire. For years, I never understood why that moment at the motel had stayed with me, but now I knew. It wasn't just some random car I saw 3 years earlier. I had been watching my own future self drive by. Shaken, I immediately took the next exit and looped back to the motel. But when I pulled in, the parking lot was almost empty, and there was no sign of me anywhere. I had already missed my past self, just as my past self had watched me disappear 3 years ago. Some kind of strange time loop had connected my past to my future. Not long after that, my Porsche nearly got me killed. I was driving on a rural highway at night when I was suddenly hit with a strong smell of gasoline. Within seconds, the passenger compartment lit up, and the engine was on fire. If you know the Porsche 914, then you know the engine sits directly behind the driver's seat. I had no time to think. At about 40 miles per hour, I bailed, literally jumped from the car, hit the pavement, rolled, scrambled to my feet, and watched my beloved Porsche explode. The steel tank caught fire. The magnesium wheels and transmission case lit up like fireworks. It was an intense, terrifying scene. A few weeks later, I got a recall notice from Porsche. Turns out the fuel injector lines had a defect. They could crack and leak fuel directly onto the engine. Exactly what happened to me. Insurance covered the loss. And in the end, I used the settlement to buy another one. Because, well, how could I not? Story 4. Did I experience a reality shift that erased my past? Years ago, I lived a completely different life. And then I woke up here, like that life was nothing more than a dream. But it wasn't a normal dream. I didn't feel like I was watching a movie in my sleep or catching glimpses of another existence. I lived it. I fell in love. I was married to someone, a woman who doesn't exist in this lifetime. I had memories, experiences, a full history. And then, just as I was waking up, I remember thinking, no, I don't want to leave her. She won't understand why I'm gone. And suddenly I was here, in a bed, in this life. At first, I could remember everything. Her smile, the way she laughed, the sound of her voice. But as my mind adjusted to this reality, the details began to fade. I forgot what her parents looked like. I forgot our first date. I forgot our favorite restaurant. I lay there and cried, not because I had a strange dream, but because I was grieving. I had lost someone I loved deeply, and I knew I would never see her again. It didn't feel like waking up. It felt like being erased from that world. I didn't want to forget what she smelled like. I didn't want to lose the way she made me feel. But I did. I could feel that life being overwritten, bit by bit, replaced by this one. In this life, I'm also married, and I love my husband too. But they're not the same person. Story 5. Was I supposed to die on that mountain? About 3.5 years ago, I was hiking on the Isle of Skye, nearing the summit of Blabane. The wind was picking up, and the terrain had become increasingly treacherous. The final stretch, maybe half a mile, was nothing but enormous boulders. It required full-body climbing. It got so difficult that I couldn't use my hiking poles anymore, so I laid them down on a flat section of rock, thinking, I'll just grab them on the way back. I climbed up onto another ledge when suddenly, this deep, grinding sound echoed from above me. The boulders shifted. They were falling, and I had no time to react. I don't remember moving, but the next thing I knew, I was standing off to the side, on a small patch of grass I hadn't even noticed before. From that new spot, I watched in horror as massive rocks came crashing down, right where I had just been standing. Exactly where I'd left my hiking sticks. Exactly where I should have been. I think I should have died, but I didn't. The icy chill I felt in that moment wasn't just from the wind. It was something else. I could feel the version of reality where I didn't make it. I could sense that weight, the collapse, the pain, the ending. I should never have gotten out of there alive. If I had climbed just a second slower, I wouldn't have made it. I would never have met my children. I wouldn't be here telling this story. So what happened? Did I slip into a different timeline? Did I experience some kind of break in reality? Or did another version of me actually die up there, becoming just another nameless hiking fatality? Even now, I don't have an answer. But I'll never forget that moment. Story 6. I experienced 2 glitches years apart, but I think they're connected. Yesterday, I left a comment on this subreddit about a time loop glitch I experienced 8 years ago. That memory reminded me of another weird glitch I posted about 3 years ago, and that's when I realized something really strange. The 2 events might be linked. This might get a little long, but I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. The first glitch happened when I was about 15 or 16. My friends and I had this place we called The Spot. It was a massive sand dune with a view of the ocean and the skyline of our beach town. The closest parking was over an hour's walk away, and technically, being on the dunes was illegal due to preservation laws. But we were reckless teenagers. We never littered or messed anything up, but yeah, we broke the rules to be there. One night, my best friend and I were making the long walk to the spot, smoking on the way. At one point, I looked inland and noticed 3 condos standing alone in the distance, kind of rare to see in our part of Florida. Then I turned my head toward the ocean and saw a heron standing on one leg in the shallows, with a plane gliding through the sky behind it. The whole thing looked beautiful. I took a deep breath and thought about how lucky I was to live there. About 5 minutes later, we passed the same 3 condos again. I looked toward the water, and there was the same heron, same plane. I thought, okay, that's weird. A few more minutes passed, and it happened again. Same condos, same bird, same plane. I was starting to freak out inside, but I didn't say anything. Until my best friend suddenly broke the silence. Dude, I swear we've passed that bird 3 times now. Now we were both totally unsettled. She joked that we were stuck in a time loop. We saw it 2 more times after that. At that point, we didn't know what else to do. We just kept walking. Finally, we stopped and turned around. In the distance, miles away, were the lights of the 3 condos. Somehow, we had covered all that distance while not moving at all. It didn't make any sense. In the moment, we nervously laughed it off. Eventually, we made it to the spot, smoked, and tried to forget about it. Fast forward 5 years. The second glitch. I still think the 2 events are connected. But you tell me. A new restaurant had opened behind the place where I worked. We shared a little outdoor space, and I'd gone there often, sometimes with my co-workers, sometimes with my neighbors. The restaurant was on a charming little street called Canal Street, lined with boutiques and cafes. One morning, I was driving down that street with my girlfriend. It was an overcast day, and the streets were quiet. As we reached the end, I glanced to my left and saw the restaurant. But that made no sense. The restaurant was supposed to be at the front of the street, on the right. I turned to my girlfriend and said, "Why do they have 2 locations on the same street?" She had no idea what I was talking about. I sat at the intersection, staring at this other version of the restaurant for at least 30 seconds. Then I looped back around to the front of the street, and there was the original location, exactly where I remembered it being. I pointed it out to my girlfriend, but she had no memory of our earlier conversation, not even from a minute ago. So I drove back to the end of the street to show her the second location. But it was gone. In its place were the same empty buildings that had been there for years. I circled the block multiple times, trying to make sense of what I had just seen, but everything was back to normal. And here's the part that really got me. The name of the restaurant? It was called The Spot. You can look it up, The Spot, in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. The only 2 glitches I've ever experienced, both involve places called The Spot. That can't just be a coincidence, right? Story 7. What are the odds of losing something, and then having it returned like this? Back in university, we used to take the bus into the nearest city for outings. A lot of us had annual bus passes with our photos on them to save money on fares. One Christmas, a group of us headed into the city to hear carolers at the cathedral. We got off the bus and walked the 20 minutes to the cathedral. We stayed for about an hour, then made the 20-minute walk back to the bus stop. As we arrived, my friend, he suddenly realized his bus pass was gone. Panic set in. We turned around and retraced our steps all the way back to the cathedral. We looked everywhere. Nothing. Accepting defeat, we walked the 20 minutes back to the bus stop for the 3rd time that night. When we got there, a long line had already formed, and the next bus was just pulling in. As we stood in line, still talking about the missing pass, I happened to look up at the top deck of the bus that had just arrived. That's when I saw him. Someone was looking down through the window, holding something small and rectangular in his hand, something familiar. I looked at my friend, then back at the person on the bus, and the guy was holding up my friend's missing bus pass. We both started nodding frantically. The person opened the window and dropped the pass down to us. Sure enough, it was his. What are the odds? We had boarded the exact same bus from earlier, even though dozens were running that night. Someone had found the missing pass, didn't toss it aside, and just happened to be looking out the window at the exact moment we were talking about it. And I just happened to look up at the right time. It still blows my mind. Out of all the possible things that could have happened, that's what happened. Story 8. About 2 years ago, my friends Mark, Daniel, and I were heading out on a trip for Mark's 21st birthday. He had always had this strange, unshakable feeling that he wouldn't make it to 21. He was also very religious, Catholic, and took that feeling seriously. We left mid-afternoon on a Friday, so the roads were packed. At every stop, Mark would say a prayer with his rosary in hand and sprinkle holy water around the car. He was already tense, and the heavy traffic made it nearly impossible to switch lanes. At one point, a car going at least 85 miles per hour cut us off. Just moments before, Daniel and I had been checking behind us, trying to help Mark change lanes. We told him, "It's no good, too many cars coming." Then chaos. Mark lost control of the car. We started spinning, flipping, slamming into the guardrail. Then silence. We climbed out of the car, shaken but unharmed, and instantly realized something was very, very wrong. The highway was empty, completely barren. This was 5 p.m. on a Friday. Just minutes earlier, the road had been packed, cars flying by in every direction. And now, not a single vehicle in sight. It made no sense. The air felt off, like something was fundamentally wrong. A heavy, eerie stillness. Mark was convinced we had died. He had always believed he wouldn't live past 21. And yet, there he was, standing next to a totaled Mini Cooper, on a highway that had just gone silent. We should have been hit. We should have been crushed. But somehow we weren't. To this day, none of us can explain what happened. And honestly, I don't think we ever will. An inquisitive person in the comments once asked what happened next. Did the highway remain empty? And the original poster responded. After we crossed to the other side of the highway, cars started coming again, about 3 minutes later. But during those 3 minutes, there were 0 cars. Nothing. Someone suggested quantum immortality. If you don't know what that means, it's the theory that we did die in that timeline, but our consciousness jumped into a version of reality where we didn't. Someone else joked that maybe Spider-Man saved us. Could be either one. Story 9. My partner wears blue light glasses in the evenings to help him wind down before bed. One night, we decided to go out after he had already been wearing them for a bit. He was standing in the living room near a clear patch of floor. No rug, no furniture, as he put on his crossbody tote bag. He took off his tortoiseshell pattern glasses and dropped them inside. I watched him do it. He was completely sure he had put them in there too. We walked maybe 3 feet to the door when he paused and said, "Hold on, I just want to double-check my bag." Something didn't feel right to him. He rummaged through his tote, then dumped everything onto the floor. Glasses were gone. They should have been right there, either in the bag or on the floor, since he had just dumped it out. But they weren't. We searched the entire area. Nothing. They had completely vanished. Time passed. Weeks later, we were going through the shoe rack by the front door. I lifted it up, and there they were. The missing tortoiseshell glasses, sitting on the carpet, behind the shoe rack. There was no reason they should have ended up there. They weren't near the door when they disappeared. They weren't anywhere close to the shoe rack when he dropped them into his bag. And the bag wasn't even dumped in that part of the room. It made no sense. But somehow, after being gone for months, they reappeared, in a place they never should have been. And this isn't the only time something like this has happened in our apartment. Objects move. Things disappear and return days, or months later. Now we're wondering, will this keep happening after we move? Or is it something about this place? I guess time will tell. Story 10. Every time I drive through Reno, Ohio, and I mean every time, there she is again. This woman isn't homeless, but she probably lives in some kind of government-assisted housing near downtown. Somehow, no matter the time or day, she always crosses my path. And I don't just mean I see her walking. She literally steps out in front of my car. Not always at a crosswalk, not always at a light, sometimes not even in a place where anyone should be walking. She does it when I'm in my usual sedan, and even when I'm in the work truck with its tinted windows. That truck isn't flashy, no decals, no bumper stickers, nothing that would make it recognizable. And yet, she still does it. I used to work at a Circle K, and she came in a few times. Talking to her was strange. She spoke in riddles, sometimes religious, sometimes sexual, sometimes both. Customers would come in after and say, "Yo, did you hear what she said to me at the pump?" They usually laughed it off. Everyone around here seems to know her, or at least know of her. I actually found some of the things she said oddly intriguing. I gave her a nickname, Deborah the Delirious. One time, Deborah came in and whispered to me, "I've got a diamond between my thighs worth more than your truck." I didn't know how to respond. It was half threat, half flirtation. Another time, she claimed she invented flavored lube and that a local shop stole her recipe. Classic Deborah. Back to the point. Sometimes it really feels like she just appears. I'm very aware of my surroundings, like hyper-aware, and yet I never see her approaching. She's just suddenly there, in front of my car. The other day, I pulled out of the bank drive-thru, turned left, waited at the red light, and there she was again. Just stepping off the curb like she knew I'd be there. And it's not just her. There's this other guy, the one who runs the laundromat. I never see him there. Ever. I only ever see him at Giant Eagle, standing in front of the registers, 80% of the time I shop. I've never been to any other laundromat in town. I don't even do my laundry there. So I wonder, if I'd never seen him that one time, would I still keep seeing him? I can't ignore these patterns anymore. My life has been one strange episode after another. Paranormal stuff, deja vu, weird tech glitches, you name it. But this is different. Ever since I had that past life regression therapy as a teenager, I've never felt quite the same. And now, I'm starting to wonder, what if I'm stuck in a loop? Are these people appearing because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Is Deborah a glitch? A test? A warning? If I change my path, start my own business, make new decisions, will she stop showing up? Or will she escalate? Because lately, when she steps in front of my car, she started blowing kisses. And last week, she pulled her shirt halfway up. Not enough for a public indecency charge. Just enough to make me swerve. I'm not schizophrenic. I am bipolar, mild. But I know what's real and what isn't. And this is starting to feel realer than anything else in my life. So tell me, has anyone else experienced something like this? Because I feel like Jim Carrey in The Truman Show. Only in my version, the extras are getting bolder. Story 11. I was in my early 30s and had just moved into a new apartment building. I didn't know many people in the area beyond a few neighbors I'd nodded to in the hallway. One of them was this older man who lived 2 floors above me. We'd exchanged a few brief hellos, but that was it. One afternoon, I was heading out to run errands. I stepped into the elevator on the ground floor and hit the button for the lobby. Just as the doors started to close, they paused, and that same older man stepped in. We nodded at each other. Awkward silence. Then, halfway down, the elevator jolted and stopped between floors. There was a flicker of panic in both our eyes, but we stayed calm. The lights didn't go out, and after about 10 seconds, the elevator resumed its descent. He glanced at me, smiled faintly, and said, "Guess time just hiccuped." I laughed. "Yeah, feels that way lately." And then nothing. The doors opened, we both walked out, and I never saw him again. Not at the mailbox. Not in the halls. Not walking his dog. Not once. A few weeks later, I asked the building manager about him. She paused and said, "No one with that description lives here." I double-checked. Apartment 5C, right? That's where I always saw him go. She looked it up. That unit had been empty for over 6 months. I still don't understand what happened. But sometimes when I'm riding the elevator alone, I think I feel that same little jolt. Like time's pausing just long enough to let something, or someone slip through. Story 12. Did I meet a child that doesn't exist? A few months ago, I visited my brother and his wife for the weekend. They have 2 sons, both under 10, and a new puppy that the kids were excited to show off. I sat in the living room chatting with my brother and sister-in-law while the boys ran in and out, full of energy, occasionally stopping to tell me stories or play with the dog. One of the boys, the younger one, has autism and a minor speech delay. The other kept playfully covering his mouth whenever the younger one tried to speak. It just seemed like typical sibling teasing, and no one thought much of it. At one point, a little girl, around 7 years old, took my hand and led me into the kitchen. She had long dark hair and wore a purple shirt. She pointed through the window into the backyard and said, "That's where I'll take the dog to go pee later." Her tone was sweet and matter-of-fact, like she was proud of being responsible. A moment later, the 2 boys came into the kitchen behind us. The back door was nearby, with stairs leading down into the basement. We stood there for a few moments, and then everyone turned to go back into the living room, except one of the boys. He lingered near the basement door. My dog stayed back too, and started barking down the stairs. I figured the boy had gone down into the basement, and the dog was just reacting to that. I stayed in the living room for a few more minutes, watched the other 2 kids play, and then said goodbye. I had a conference to attend, but before I left, we made plans to meet for lunch the next day. At lunch, I casually mentioned something the little girl had said about the dog. My sister-in-law responded, "Oh, you mean our daughter? You didn't meet her. She was still asleep when you visited." I froze. "No," I said, confused. "There were 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl." She took me into the kitchen. She showed me the backyard. Her face changed. She looked genuinely puzzled. Then she said something that made my skin crawl. "I had a miscarriage a few years ago." My brother shot her a look, half warning, half disbelief. "Don't talk about that," he muttered, clearly uncomfortable. No one said another word about it, but I still can't forget the girl with the dark hair and the purple shirt. The one who took my hand and showed me the yard. The one who apparently was never born. Story 13. This isn't the first time something like this has happened to me, and that's what makes it even harder to ignore. We were in the middle of packing for a move, and I had recently inherited a Rolex from my late mother-in-law. It wasn't a flashy modern piece, but it was valuable and sentimental. I placed it carefully on the top shelf of a cabinet, out of the way, and didn't think much about it after that. A few weeks later, my father-in-law was coming into town for a visit. Since it had been his wife's watch, I thought he might appreciate seeing it again. I went to the cabinet. Gone. I ran my hand across the top shelf, sweeping from corner to corner. Nothing. I got a chair, climbed up, checked every edge and crevice. Still nothing. I started getting frustrated. I asked my husband if he'd moved it, maybe by accident. He hadn't touched it. I started tearing through the apartment, checking drawers, boxes, anywhere it might have been moved. I even looked in places that made no sense. My frustration turned into anger. "There's no way a watch just disappears," I said. "I know I left it right there." And then there it was. The Rolex. Sitting exactly where I had originally placed it. Same spot. Perfectly still. Like it had never been missing at all. I stood there, staring at it, stunned. I hadn't overlooked it. I had checked that shelf 5 or 6 times, carefully. I had run my hands over it. I had stood on a chair and shined a flashlight into every corner. It wasn't there. And now it was. I can't explain it. And the more I think about it, the more unsettled I feel. Has anyone else experienced something like this? Because I'm starting to think reality has a few blind spots. Story 14. Let me start by admitting something. I get irrationally annoyed by certain kinds of cyclists. Not the ones commuting to work or getting around town, that I totally respect. I'm talking about the ones in full spandex gear, sunglasses, helmets, and matching team outfits, treating public roads like their personal racetracks, especially during rush hour. So there I was, stuck behind one of them. Lime green bike. Ridiculous squiggly lines all over his outfit. 2 giant X's on the legs, like the kind Chopper wears on his hat in one piece. His jersey said Team Fubar, which I later looked up. It's a cycling team based in Los Angeles. Which is strange, because this was nowhere near California. I was crawling 15 miles per hour below the speed limit, mentally losing it. Eventually, the cyclist turned off the main road onto this dead-end street beneath a small overpass. I felt triumphant. "Good," I muttered. "Because of you, my drive was really foo." Well, you get the idea. I even chuckled at my own pun. With the road finally clear, I hit every green light. I turned left onto a short bridge, and eventually stopped at a red light after crossing it. The entire sequence, from when I left him behind to stopping at the light, took maybe a minute. That's when I saw him again. Same cyclist. Waiting at the intersection on the bike trail that crossed the road I was now on. Same lime green bike. Same Team Fubar jersey. Same squiggly lines. Same giant X's. He had somehow gotten ahead of me. There was no possible way. I never saw him pass me. And there's no trail or access point that connects that dead-end road to the bike path across the river. I even checked Google Maps when I got home. I zoomed in and traced every possible route. Nothing. No bridge. No shortcut. Just water. The only crossing point is the bridge I drove over, way ahead of him. So what happened?